Welcome back. It's great to see you all getting involved in what the platform has to offer. All the content from today will be available to view on demand within 24 to 48 hours. So don't worry if you've missed something earlier. Let's start our afternoon with a panel discussion focusing on water efficiencies. Whilst the work the public sector has done has made great progress towards a greener future, more sustainable transformation is urgently needed. A recent study revealed that 70% of those working within the public sector, which is an estimated 5.6 million employed people, take care of their water use at home rather than at work. And whilst I'm unaware of any studies, I'm sure the same could be said across the nation if we were to investigate water use in the home versus at work. So, when we focus on reducing water waste and the factors that cause waste, we can determine the attitudes towards water use and identify the changes that are needed. Other solutions to improve water efficiency are the incorporation of water management systems. These systems offer local authorities the opportunity to make a difference in sustainability, lowering costs in the long term. So, here to discuss with me water efficiency systems are the brilliantly suited panel: Lizzie Kemp, Energy Manager Specialist at Redcar and Cleveland Borough Council; Andrew Atkinson, Energy Manager at Sunderland City Council; James Deegan, Senior Account Manager, Business Stream; and Bettina Lang, Associate Professor in Law and Regulation, Centre for Socio-Legal Studies at Oxford University. Now, remember, this really is your opportunity to ask any questions you may have of our panelists. So if you do have a question, don't be shy. Use our live Q&A function on the right-hand side of your screen. So I'd like to say a very big hello and warm welcome to all my panelists. And if we may start off with you, James, in layman's terms, let's start right at the beginning. What do we mean by water efficiency, and why does it need to be such a massive priority for the public sector?
Thanks, Helen, and thanks for having me on the panel today. Effectively, there are two key benefits to reducing water use. Public sector organisations can reduce their costs, both water and energy costs, and they can also reduce their environmental impact. As a public sector organisation, using less water can directly impact your bottom line by implementing often very simple steps, such as installing water-saving devices or automated meter readers, or even just undertaking a health check of your water. Water bills can reduce, and not insignificantly. We recently saved Scotland's Rural College over £46,000 simply by proactively monitoring their water use and found hidden leaks whilst they were closed due to COVID. As well as that, we have effectively the halo effect, the savings that you can get from reducing water. If you're heating water in your organisation, such as a shower in a leisure centre or even just kettles, then using less water can bring down energy bills too. But financial benefits aside, there's also a strong case for reducing water use for environmental purposes, both in terms of protecting the planet and helping contribute towards net zero targets. You only need to reflect on the extreme weather conditions we've experienced in recent years to understand that water is a precious resource that we need to look after. And the impact of hotter and dry conditions in the UK is definitely a concern, which we're anticipating could get worse unless we all collectively seek to reduce our water usage. It's therefore really important that when considering how an organisation can reduce environmental impact, the water is included. Using less water will help some of the climate change risks, such as like water shortages and droughts that we're already starting to see. And finally, it's probably worth adding that we know that the UK government's Environment Bill is going to include a water consumption reduction target. So there's definitely an opportunity now, if you haven't started already, to really get ahead of the game and proactively understand and reduce water use. So I think it's inevitable, given the urgency around climate change, organisations are going to be under increasing scrutiny to demonstrate the steps they're taking to reduce the environmental impact they have. And saving water is a relatively easy way of doing that.
Answer there, James. Andrew, I'm going to turn to you. I'm sure you've been nodding and agreeing with a lot of that, but building on that, you could just add to why reducing water consumption is so important.
Well, for Sunderland Council, we spend nearly £1.1 million a year on water. Of that, about 600,000 is down to consumption, and the remainder is down to fixed costs. So it's not an insignificant cost. The other thing that sort of James really touched on was water has the potential to go quite wrong quite quickly due to leaks, and the amount of money that can be lost through a large leak can be very substantial and happened very quickly within the space of a few days. So,
Lizzie, how do things compare at Redcar and Cleveland Council where you are, and what water efficiency devices have you installed or started to use?
So yeah, Redcar, we spend roughly about between 750,000 a year, and we recently dropped it to about 611,000 a year. Regarding what devices we've installed at Redcar, we're currently just on water AMR devices to give us that kind of daily usage that we can see. We're currently working with Wave because we want to install some limpet readers, which are a bit more of a cheaper device than the AMR, but it allows us to get more reads from devices, because what we struggle with is amount like true data and reads. We get a lot of estimated billing, and with that, it's quite hard. We got stumped by a massive water leak in one of our leisure centres, and because we didn't have AMR there, or we weren't getting a lot of true billing, it took a lot longer to detect than if we'd had an AMR meter installed and more true billing. So with that, we're looking to get 10 more AMR meters to the current 5 we have, as well as the 10 limpet readers, our current installations. But we definitely want to strive to get more AMR loggers across the board, as well as anything we can do as a local authority to improve our water efficiency.
Certainly sounds like you're making a big difference already, which is really encouraging to hear. Bettina, let's turn to you, if we may. What input, if any, does your water supply company provide to the council for devising water efficiency measures?
So, sorry, kind of, could you clarify, is that a question you would like all of the panel to address, or
starting off with you, if you would?
Yeah, so I thought it would be very interesting to see what the experiences of different councils in how their water supplier is helping them to put into place water efficiency measures. It seems to me kind of that it's a newer and emerging agenda for public sector organizations as well to become involved in the water efficiency agenda. And so it would be interesting to understand more as well in terms of the help and support they're getting from their water supplier in doing so.
Do you want to pick up on that, Lizzie and Andrew?
Yes.
Go first, Andrew.
Oh, right. I mean, we've got the same water retailer as Redcar in Wave, and Wave have been very proactive in helping us to, I guess, get our data right first of all, because that's the first point, the starting point. We've looked at meter reading. We've got about 30 full-blown AMR devices, and we've got, I think, about 10 limpets as well already. We're looking now to add another 58 devices to the existing water supplies, and we're working with Wave to procure those at a very reasonable cost, because I think it's been indicated it's quite an expensive option when you've got small supplies. So we've looked now at our portfolio, and everything over about 800 cubic meters a year, we are looking to install a full-blown AMR device.
Interesting, yeah.
And Lizzie?
Yeah, like Andrew mentioned, we're both under Wave, and we can both say that we can't fault them. The assistance they provide is brilliant. At the moment, I don't know if Andrew can agree, we're having like regular, I think every month or 2 months catch-ups with Wave, and they're really working on trying to make all their local authorities more water efficient, and they're currently doing a lot of work for us to benchmark, because it's all well looking and a site might look like it's a high consuming site, but once you put AMR in it and kind of work out based on either footfall or floor area, it might actually not be as big, and it could be potentially more water efficient than it is. So at the moment, we're doing a massive task and benchmarking our buildings to put us in a better picture to understand how we are against other schools in the country, other office buildings, leisure centres, etc. So I think once we have all that data, Red Council will be running to obviously improve and install what's required to, improve our benchmarking data.
Bettina, your thoughts before I move back to James?
I think it's really interesting to hear these examples of improving water efficiency. I was just wondering as well whether you perhaps think about using the data that you obtain on what's actually baseline water use for doing campaigns as well, perhaps for water efficiency that involve comparison, and to say, like, look here, we've got a best performer in a particular public sector organization, for example, maybe in a school, and how can you, and sort of build that into a campaign that says, is your water usage coming up to that same efficient level? Is it above, below? We found in our research that some of the water efficiency campaigns that use reference groups and telling people about their actual water use and how it compares to an average can be quite effective.
Mm-hmm. Well, we have a system called Systems Link, which is a monitoring and targeting package, which we use for gas, electricity and water. And that's something that we do carry out regularly, is running sort of league tables and assessing performance of different types of buildings so that we can compare each one against the other, because you've got to also remember that a school is not just a school. Some have got community use, some have got much bigger sort of pupil role than others. So we're not just looking at the headline figure, we're trying then to benchmark that against certain criteria, such as the number of pupils or on a floor area basis. And then we're working with the schools who are on the less well-performing side to try and help them.
I'd like to bring James back into the conversation, but Claire's just pointed out, Claire says she needs to Google some AMI devices and limpet readers. She says it'd be helpful to use some lesser-known terms briefly explained. She says if she's the only one who doesn't know what they are, then don't worry. But yes, we'll you on water specialist. Thank you for that, Claire. And James, you as our only supplier here today, you've recently announced that you saved the Scottish public sector nearly £1.4 million within the first year of being awarded the Scottish public sector contract. Can you share with us how you did it and perhaps some of your learnings along the way?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, just picking up on that, especially in water, we do love an acronym, so I will try and not speak in technical jargon as much as possible. Yeah, we in Business Stream were awarded the Scottish Public Sector Framework Contract in April last year. And this picks up what effectively it answers a little bit Bettina's question as well on the relationships and the values that when retailers and customers work together, how much they can actually achieve. We've since April 2020, we've saved with the Scottish public sector nearly £1.4 million in water saving costs. That's as well as that is we've helped them to reduce the amount of water that they've used by over 800,000 cubic meters, which is 800 million litres of water, or if you like the old water to swimming pool conversion, that's 354 Olympic-size swimming pools worth of water that's been saved. So it's a significant saving, both in terms of cash for the bottom line of the organisations, but also from the environmental impact. Our account managers have been working really closely with these customers to help understand their water usage and putting these proactive measures in place to help identify leaks and stops wasting water and money. We've also developed a water efficiency fund. So if for public sector bodies in Scotland, they're able to apply to, we've got a £100,000 fund where public sector organisations can apply based on their water efficiency projects to help fund these proactive measures that will help benefit the environment. We've received quite a number of the applications that are currently being reviewed, and I'm really excited to see the outcome of these.
Olympic-sized swimming pools is that's a great way to describe it because we've got a visual reference there. familiar with all the, well, not being able to imagine that amount of water in, when you do it in metric terms or whatever. How on earth have you managed to get that amount of water saved in such a short amount of time? What were the key areas that worked really well?
So effectively, it's and some of these have been used throughout the panels today. The first key stage, regardless of whether on water or energy, is understanding your consumption and your usage. We need to get a baseline from where we can spot inefficiency. There's secondly, and again, Lizzie and Andrew have mentioned this. There's automated meter readers, so AMR technology, which can be installed on meters to understand the profile and the consumption trend. We've also seen that water has historically been slightly lower on organizations' agendas than energy, so gas and electric. And a lot of these customers and organizations, when we come to join them, haven't really done very much, if any, water efficiency or water saving work so far. So we're finding that there's the vast majority of this, and surprisingly enough, we said 354 Olympic-sized swimming pools, 800 million litres of water. The vast majority of that was leakage. So it's inefficient net infrastructure.
Is leakage something that you think is a problem, Andrew? You have to be very aware of that at the council.
Yes, leakage and poor housekeeping and the both can go hand in hand, as well as poor maintenance. So we tend to find that the wastewater is either down to a leak, which leaks can occur at any time. They can not be a leak today, and then we can have a school or an office building where tomorrow a leak occurs. Poor maintenance, again, several years ago, we put in sort of water saving devices on urinals to stop them flushing unnecessarily. Like everything, those haven't been maintained over the years and they fail in an open position. So again, you can be losing water that way. Taps, we put a lot of push taps in that self-close. So in theory that they should reduce water consumption, but again, those do need maintenance, and maintenance sits in a different budget to the energy side or the water side. Poor housekeeping is just people not understanding the impact of their actions. Often we get people washing vehicles, but then they'll just leave the hose pipes on, and it can be quite significant, and the costs can ramp up quite quickly.
There's so much more to think about. I haven't given water this much thought for a long time, and it's fascinating to hear the sort of things you're doing. I was just looking at one of the questions that was coming in, Lizzie, that's now disappeared from my screen. Karen was asking how much you've saved. I mean, you touched on how much you've saved, but how much you expect to save in the future. So, what are your sort of your savings, and are you doing the same kind of things as Andrew is?
Yes, I don't think we're as far ahead as Sunderland are, but we are catching up. To be fair, I started at the council 10 years ago, and at the time, electric and gas were there. A lot of time was spent, officer time, leading those two, utilities. And as a new starter, I was given water, and within, I'd say, the first 6 months I started, just looking at billing was a massive. Brought the council quite a bit of money back, because we were having like allotments and cemeteries being charged sewage charges, and it never being picked up on, because obviously it's all well having the data, but if you've not got an officer looking at it and keeping on top of it, it'll just go unnoticed. And I think about 20k was brought in just by overcharges to cemeteries and allotments that were being charged sewage, where the water wasn't ever going back to Northumbrian Water's drains at the time. They were just going to ground. So we got all that billing sorted. And then there was a site as well that when I first started, was being charged for, and there were quite large bills, and the site had been demolished and closed, and for some reason it just never got closed off. And I think that came back with a £25,000 credit. But there's just so many savings to be made, and if, any authority or business just getting that data in, and allocating someone to look into it, you can bring, you know, a lot of savings in from the water.
What do you consider as potential barriers to changing cultures around water use by council, by their employees, and also potentially contractors?
I think the overall picture in which as well water efficiency campaigns are happening is changing with the increasing size of the retail market. And I think it would be interesting to understand more kind of whether that as well sort of distances the ultimate customers of the water services really from those who take the raw water from the natural environment, are directly at the source. And so I wonder if there could be as well issues around really kind of the retail suppliers kind of being initial part in the puzzle, how that perhaps as well makes the picture more complex. I wonder if that has implication for information flows, for knowing kind of really the data on what is non-household demand and so forth.
Does anybody want to pick up on that? Andrew, Lizzie, on that?
Oh, the barriers. So as well to like jump on it, I think is like the lack of funding and budgets for water efficiencies. And I can only speak for Redcar, but when it comes to obviously looking at water efficiency devices to install, due to like the paybacks for anything, it always seems to be quite difficult to get it through to the end and get a project through, purely based on some of the water efficiency upgrades are quite expensive, but then the paybacks for a council, we've either got hit 7-year or 10-year margins, but a lot of the times they come a lot higher. Again, I don't see much funding. I don't know if anyone on the panel can say, I've not really seen a lot of water funding to support schools, councils, to become more water efficient. I don't know if anyone can jump on that.
Andrew, much funding?
No, there isn't. And really, as Lizzie said, we've got to make a business case and compete against other priorities the council have got to deliver. That said, if it makes good financial sense, then we will be allocated some funding, maybe not all the funding, but some funding. I think as well that water efficiency isn't as high up on people's agenda generally as, say, climate change and carbon. And especially in the Northeast, we're quite fortunate in that we don't suffer from shortages of supplies very much. So, but that has the knock-on effect that people don't really think about their water use. And that can go back to at home when you're brushing your teeth, they just leave taps running. And it's just not something that's been sort of publicized or given the general awareness to the population as a whole about water efficiency and why it is very, very important.
Stuart makes a good point. He says, like many of these things, there's a level of behaviour change that needs to be implemented. School meals, kitchens can be a key area where water's wasted due to taps being open but not used to fill sinks, etc. Bettina, do you think behaviour change we need to see as well? You know, not just from the authorities, but from us, the consumers.
I think so. I think it's a very essential part of the picture. And I think the point we discussed earlier about reducing leakage is absolutely key, such an important part in terms of how much water is being lost through leakage. But I think there's also a part where we'll have tackled more of that. And the question is, what else can we do? And what is it that needs to be done in terms of our approach, the values that we have around water, in terms of sort of pushing the envelope further. And I think that's particularly important as well during drought situations, which we're increasingly encountering, where kind of in the particular situation, kind of like a positive behavioral response from all of us, but as well with a particular opportunity of the sheer sort of scale as well that public sector organizations can have. So that as well in the acute drought scenarios, I think behavioral change is very helpful and important.
James, intrigued to know whether you have plans as a company to achieve net zero and what kind of plans you've got in place.
Yes, so we have to be able to practice what we preach, don't we?
Yes, definitely.
As a responsible business, we're committed to making a positive difference to the environment, and we play quite clearly a key role in helping our customers reduce their water use. We're lucky that we don't have a massively large carbon footprint as a water retailer. But in recent years, we've definitely launched a number of initiatives to drive our efforts to become a more circular office, including we've removed plastic bottles from our vending machines. We provided our colleagues with reusable bottles and coffee cups. And it's all these steps that we've taken in addition to promoting behavioural change. As we said, as all the panelists have said, behavioural change is one of the key things we've got to do here. Everybody knows how to save water. And it's interesting, Helen, as you said, there's that survey that says 7 out of 10 of us don't pay attention to water saving at the workplace, whereas they do at home. So we know how to do it, we're just not doing it at work. And as I say, we think it's key to promote behavioural change and effectively embed it into our culture. But having said that, we know we need to do more. Business Stream is part of the Scottish Water Group, and we've got an ambition to be net zero by 2040, which is 5 years ahead of the Scottish Government target. And we've also set a specific target to reduce our carbon footprint by 20% over the next 12 months. So we like to think that whilst there's a lot more to do, we're certainly driving, we are essentially doing what we're telling our customers to do.
James, reducing your carbon footprint by 20% in a year sounds to me, we've used the word ambitious today a few times. That does sound quite ambitious, and there's a lot of companies really not knowing where to start. How are you going to achieve that in such a short space of time, and what tips can you give to people out there who think we really need to start this journey but feel perhaps overwhelmed by, you know, sometimes it's just getting started, isn't it? You just need to start making a difference.
It is, absolutely. It's in specifically about us at Business Stream, we're implementing a series of measures where, for example, as we know, like a lot of businesses over the past 12 months, we've seen our behaviors change. We've been doing a lot more virtual conferencing, as with everybody, from not being able to travel. So there has been some benefits there. And there's an element of how now that that the pandemic is changing and we're able to do things as we did before March 2020, there's going to be elements of the behavioural change that were forced upon us in the last 12 months that we can actually take moving forward. Do we need to have a face-to-face meeting when we can do it via any of the virtual conferencing programs that are on there? But in addition to that, we've reviewed our fleet of vehicles. We're adapting our paper and printing processes. As a billing company, we have a large amount of printing that we do in paper usage. And as I say, we're evaluating our business travel policy. It's one of those things that taking the first step can definitely be really daunting, especially for any organisation. And we're certainly learning as we go. But there's lots and lots of great resources available to help demystify that net zero and provide practical advice. One of the tools that we use for our colleagues is the Count Us In platform, which individuals can use to identify practical steps for them to reduce their own carbon pollution and carbon footprint.
Bettina, how do you integrate measures for reducing carbon emissions and reduce drinking water?
I think integrating is a really good way forward. And there's research that shows that the context in which a water efficiency message is delivered as part of a water efficiency campaign is quite important. And I think now is such a great moment as well with the forthcoming COP kind of to draw on the greater awareness around climate change and to say, well, energy efficiency measures fit so well with water efficiency measures. And there are a number of specific ways as well in which we can see that. Environment Agency studies have shown that hot water use, for example, in the domestic context, is one of the greatest sources of the carbon footprint of the home. And so on the wider scale as well of public sector organizations, we can see how there is a great synergy between reducing the carbon footprint and tacking onto that, linking to that as well, the water efficiency measures.
Just looking at a couple more questions. Heather's asking, should water audits be compulsory for every big build? I don't know whether Lizzie or Andrew, whether you feel that's something that you can help on.
Right, shall I come in there, Lizzie?
Yeah, of course.
I was just going to say, I think it's a necessary part of the journey to achieve a water efficient building. Once you've got the enhanced data through the metering technologies, then you're able to identify the quick wins and identify where water's being wasted. But what you don't know there is what processes are going on in the buildings already that aren't shown to be wasting water, but actually could be more water efficient. So that is something that we want to move on in the next step and look at those buildings and carry out water audits so that we know what equipment is in there that is using water and when it should be using water. Is it something that we can invest in to improve? Is it something we can add controls to? So yes, I would be very supportive of mandatory water audits.
Quick thought, Lizzie, from you on that?
No, I totally agree. I think as a council, we've had a few companies over the years who have delivered some water audits and surveys for us. We had one company that did 10 free audits for us, and from it, they identified and provided us with recommendations, and it saved us, just from that, doing those surveys at no cost to the council. I think it was like 10,000, just short of 11,000 cubic meters from, you know, a simple survey. And, you know, if we had those surveys and that expertise across the board, you know, it, you know, stands us in good stead to make the necessary changes needed to, you know, reduce our consumption.
We've got a question from Cara. She says many LAs have installed water refill locations, but how can we encourage retailers to also enable customers to refill from their taps, especially if there's concern about contamination, to satisfy the concerns of retailers? Who can help me with that? Is that a question that any of you can take? This is palpable. Somebody help me out here. Come on, Andrew, come to my rescue.
Well, I mean, I don't know. We haven't put any sort of water refill or specific water refill facilities in for people to use in schools and things. It probably is something that needs to catch up with where we're at now. Historically, there used to be water fountains in schools, but these were taken out for various different reasons, including contamination and Legionella. So it's not something I can comment on directly.
No, don't worry. The other point she was making as well is about with hand washing, with COVID requiring. How can LA's beyond low flow taps reduce water consumption at taps? Is that anything you've looked at, Lizzie, with everybody washing their hands in the pandemic?
Not massively looked into it, but the little bit I've done is I started some work on, I know it's going to sound daft, but you know, push taps, and obviously it's all well getting push taps installed with the restrictors in it. But what I noticed going to a couple of sites over the summer is when I was doing surveys, when you were pressing the push tap, it was just staying on for like 30 seconds to a minute, and it's like, it's all well installing this push tap, which is going to save you a lot of water, but if it's still doing the job like a manual one, which you turn on and can be left on, then there's no point. So I'm currently working on a kind of across the local authority to get, obviously, them all kind of housekeeping and checked, because there's no reason that it should be left on longer than maybe, I think when I spoke to one of the companies that did us a water survey, they were saying 5 to 7 seconds. So yes.
We'll leave you to battle that thought. We've reached the end, but I'd just like to give James the final thought. How optimistic are you feeling about water saving in the public sector? Is enough being done? Are we going to get there? What help is available for people who really realise that they have to start making a difference?
Yeah, absolutely. Will we get there? Yes, we will. There are a number of barriers in place, as Lizzie and Andrew have said. There's regarding funding is probably the key. There's public sector procurement regulations. There's lots of things that have to be done in order to invest, in order to save. One of the things that I would just note on the point about funding is that, as Lizzie was mentioning earlier, the costs of not doing anything, if you have a leak and you have a massive bill of £20,000 or however much the bill is, that more than offsets some of the proactive interventions you can put in place. And as Andrew said, if the business case is strong enough, and a lot of, especially now that these water reduction targets are going to come in, they probably will be, and if not, they'll be coming more strong. I'm sure there's opportunity to get funding where it's needed. In terms of specifics of what can customers do, as we say, understanding baseline is probably the first step, And then once you've got that, I would suggest speak to your retailer, speak to your supplier, find out more about water saving measures available to them. It's a number of the interventions are pretty simple devices that can make a significant difference. And effectively, your water supplier is there to guide you and advise you. So, yeah, I would advise make the most of that expertise and just reach out to them.
Yeah.
And I have got 1 extra minute left, so I fibbed. I can actually give you the final word, Bettina. Have you been encouraged by what you've heard today, and particularly what's going on at Lizzie and Andrew's councils?
Absolutely. And I think it's very important to have those facts, to hear these initiatives being taken, because in the past, I think there has been less emphasis really as well on the public sector as a great opportunity for further water efficiency. So yes, very much so.
Mm-hmm. Can I just jump in there as well and just say one other thing in the public sector is talk to your counterparts in different local authorities, because we're all facing the same challenge, and working together is better than working alone.
Yeah, we can see that today, the way, you and Lizzie have interacted. I think it is important to talk to other councils, isn't it, when you're dealing with that, and see what's working, what's not working. And they say 2 brains are better than 1 on a problem, don't they, on that kind of thing. We are out of time now, but I'd like to say a very big thank you to all of our panelists for such an insightful conversation. With that, we're going to move into our last break of the day, which is one last chance to engage with our speed networking functionality, and also to see if you're in with a chance to climb your way to the top of our leaderboard. I'll see you back here, she says, just looking at the clock, at 3:10. I'll see you then.